Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a fresh and insightful interview featuring one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Trudie Styler's new comedic drama, Freak Show. Based on the novel by James St. James, the film tells the story of Billy Bloom, a boldly confident and flamboyant teen newly relocated to an ultra-conservative high school in the Deep South. After suffering persecution and bullying, he decides to wear his inner freak with pride and run for homecoming queen. Freak Show is Miss Styler's feature directorial debut. Her other directing credits include the documentary The Sweat Box and the short film Wait. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Ms. Styler spoke with director Ira Sachs about filming Freak Show. During their conversation, Ms. Styler discusses how she came to direct the film, how she tackled the film's themes of bullying, and her approach to handling the tonal shifts between comedy and drama.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. Thank you for that film. I had only seen it tonight, so I'm with the audience in the experience. And for me, it's just a very moving story that I found much more personal than I expected, and I imagine for you it is as well. It might not seem obviously autobiographical, but I sort of wanted to start by asking you, why this film? Why this story?
Well, the story came to Maven Pictures, which is a company that Celine Rattray and me have headed up for 7 years, and to Flower Films. And we really loved the story of Billy's fight against his detractors and the wit and the wisdom that he shows throughout, even when he's beaten and bullied and beaten to a pulp. The first thing he asks for when he comes round is, could he please have his lip gloss? And he has an indomitable spirit and leadership qualities, and so when he sets out his bid for homecoming queen, of course we want him to win. So I was very attracted to the story. I do think there are personal reasons. I seem to say this quite a lot on the promotion, so I hope it doesn't seem like like I'm doing a poor little me here. But I was hit by a truck when I was nearly 3, and my face was very severely scarred. And those scars sort of like went around with me. So when I went to school, the expression in the film, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. That is really a very true aphorism that happens in schools, sadly, when kids look different. Doesn't mean to say you have to have a physical impairment. It could be the wrong hairdo. It could be the wrong, you believe in the wrong God, or you, as in Billy's case, he feminizes himself and is figuring out who is he really. I think that I resonate with the story of being bullied as a child, and I think that what it did in later life was maybe perhaps help give me a voice to give my voice to represent people who are bullied in other ways. The indigenous people of our rainforest, Sting and myself have worked for 30-something years in tropical rainforest areas with indigenous people who live so remotely from anywhere else that their voices often have not been heard, and so to really represent their rights and social justice is something that my husband and me have taken very, very seriously, and I think that perhaps that my background really contributed to that.
It reminded me of something I think about being a teenager, is that there's so much pain. It's almost like consistent, but the film is a comedy, and it has a lot of lightness. I'm wondering what the kids that you were working with, the actors the young people, what they brought, and what it was like on set?
It was a very joyful set. I mean, that set was a very focused set because we had really very little money, less than $3 million, and a 4-week prep because I was not the director at the get-go. I was only the producer. We had a director in place. Our director had to take a very sudden personal leave of absence, which left us holding the baby. And I asked the producers, would they consider my taking on the directing chair? And they said yes, if you think you can get it done, because you saw that it's was shot seasonally appropriate, the early fall of 2015, in fact. So I got the gig at the end of July, and we didn't have a cast, we didn't have any money, but we had this sort of like love of the story to tell the story. So the first person that I called was Bette Midler, and asked her if I may send her the script. She didn't sound terribly keen on the phone, but lo and behold, 2 weeks later, she said, I'm in. And at that point, it was all systems go to get the film cast. Finding Billy was really, really key, obviously, to find the right Billy, and that did keep me awake at night, because I had this growing sensation, oh Lord, if I can't find the right actor, or we don't get the right Billy, we're screwed. This film, we don't have a film. As you see, he's in every scene except 2, I believe, in the film. So it's a huge central role. So.
Where did you find him?
I found Alex in London. I flew to London and asked A.V. Kaufman to send me some British actors. And when I was working with my other director, we'd seen 85 young male actors, and some were they were very, very good, but I couldn't quite resonate in the same way that I did when I met Alex and spent about 10 minutes in his company, and this innate wisdom, this sort of like this kid who really felt like out from another century almost, Quentin Crisp, an old soul. So we kept on amending the script once we'd cast Alex, even though we were so pressured. So all those Oscar Wilde quotes came post the casting of Alex Lawther.
This is your first feature that you've directed? Is that
yes,
correct?
It is. Yeah.
And what was the hardest thing about it, and what was the biggest surprise of the process?
I'll answer that in reverse. I think the biggest surprise after I got the first take done, which was a scene with Billy and Flip coming back to the house after the hospital, I felt my legs go from underneath me. It was like I was so terrified. And after that take, I looked at my actors and I just said, "You're not. This isn't about you. You've no business being afraid at this point. You've got to give them all you've got. Help them in every way that you can." And I think that when I'm given that task to do, I'll step into those shoes. And it was just a very quick coming for me to get myself together and to really think this is we're telling a big story here about that it examines very big themes, albeit in a comedic way, and this is not about you. So get on with telling this story. And I felt an amazing sense of peace, actually, during those 22 days. It's just a calm came over me, and we did come in on time, and we were a little bit over budget, but nothing in a way that was, demeaning or or that led anyone to go ouch. It was done very efficiently, and I pay tribute, of course, to not just the cast, but the incredible crew that we managed to get on board.
Mm-hmm. You're a parent, and I'm wondering, and you've had I'm friends with Nikki, so I know your daughter.
Yes.
And I'm curious what you brought to the production in terms of your own experience of having watched your kids live through this period in their own lives.
I said, Sting and I raising, we have 6 children between us and 6 grandchildren now. It was very important because we were brought up, the pair of us, in quite modest surroundings, and our kids were brought up in very sort of like privileged environment, and we both felt that we never wanted them to take anything, their lives, for granted, or the sort of like the wonderful things that they have that other people don't have. We didn't want them to just sort of like think that this is just what befalls everybody in life. And that sort of like it's a challenge as a parent who, Sting's a successful recording artist, so there were many more resources in our lives than there were when he and me were growing up. And so we decided we would live in the countryside and take the kids out of the urban kind of jungle to really feel the soil beneath their feet, and to we had a farm, and so that they had this sort of like kind of bucolic upbringing and a little old-fashioned, if you like, where we have old-fashioned manners, and so the kids are very polite and they don't take things for granted. They're good kids. We've had issues with all of them, but in the big scheme of things, being quite often absentee parents, I think that I've seen that sometimes that has played into some insecurities in them, and when you look back on how you parent, there are some regrets, and I think that that's one of mine, that I was always sort of busy with our foundation, or supporting Sting, and sometimes feeling that the kids were either being pushed around the world and not really having the consistency that I could have perhaps brought to them as a mum. But we have to look at the big picture. Are they happy and fulfilled? Yeah. And do they work hard? Sting and I have very hard work ethic. We're very driven people, and happily all our kids are very driven and very generous, and they're bringing up their children very well, which is very, very good to see that.
The sensitivity of your answer just now is reflected in the film, I would say, because there is a empathy for the parents, for the kids, and ultimately I think what's most powerful of the film is the general understanding of the universal, in the struggle of the story. So thank you for that. I want to open it up a little bit to the audience if people have questions. I'm just going to repeat the question, which is, the film harkens back to films like The Breakfast Club and other teen movies, but it seems very much of this era. Were these inspirations to you?
It's been compared to a John Hughes films, Breakfast Club, and
16 Candle.
I don't think I love those films. I don't think I was a particular sort of like, I want this film to look like Breakfast Club or to sort of like be like it. And other people have said it's a bit like Harold and Maude, which I sort of like can't quite get to. I think they meant Alex is a little like Harold, probably, but it's a very old soul.
It's a bit like Maude too.
Yes, he's a bit like yeah, it's very good. I didn't have time really to think how will this film look? I had time and personal time to think, what is this story? Let's tell this story. And I've known Dante Spinotti since 1988, 87, I think. We did I work I used to work prolifically as an actor in England, and I did 3 films in Italy. And this one particular film was called Fair Game. It's not a marvelous film at all, but we shot it in Cinecittà over 12 weeks, and the cast is me and Greg Henry, who shot for 3 days. I don't know if do you know Greg? He's in a lot of Brian De Palma films. It was great. And it was like wonderful when Greg came for 3 days, because the rest of the time I was just with a snake for the 11 weeks that followed. And, and it was a very weird experience, weird and wonderful. Nando Scarfiotti was the production designer. Milena Canonero did what little costumes that I had. I was mainly running around in my undies being pursued by this sort of venomous, terrible snake. And so there was a lot of time for chat on the set while the poor snake was being made up and put through his paces. And Dante and me spoke a lot, and he asked, did I love acting? And I said, yes, I did. Did I think that I would always act? And I said, I think one day when, I'm retired from being an actor, because, we're sort of used, women of my generation, to being kind of like pushed out of limelight once you turned 40. It has changed a lot, but we could talk all night about what happens to women in the entertainment industry and how we're dominated by male society throughout the entire entertainment industry. But I said, yes, maybe I would be a director. And he said, well, I'll be at your side when you decide to direct. So in 2015, I made this call to him, and I've stayed in touch with him through the years. I said, hey, you remember in 1987 when you said you'd be at my side when I became a director? Well, that day's come. Are you in? And he said, well, when is it? And I said, September 2015. So he said, I'm in. And I'm speaking about, to this story of what the narrative is, because Dante and me in those 12 weeks learnt from each other, him from looking very intensely at who my character was, who I was intrinsically. It was a very sort of like big portrait of a young woman, troubled woman. And so we have a shorthand, and thank God it was him, because we talked a lot about the intimacy that I wanted to create in the film, that I always wanted Billy to be in our purview, that we feel always very quickly we are on side with him, that we never really lose sight of him, to get up very close and personal, and we use this Fraser lens. You've seen these sort of like, sometimes Billy looks sort of like it's like almost like in a goldfish bowl, where we examining him, and in the halls of shame that I so remember at school, where the bullies are spitballing and calling out, that we wanted to really see, Billy's anguish, and that was very important to me to tell that story. On the other hand, we're in a comedy, so to really sort of parlay between the comedic theme to keep the energy and the pace up. And as an actor, I think this has served me quite well, because I'm a classically trained actor. I went to a wonderful academy, the Bristol Old Vic, and I was a year ahead of Danny Day-Lewis, and known Danny for many years. And it was a very strict academy where you really learnt put through your paces with different styles of acting. And with comedy, you keep up the energy, the energetic pace. And when it came to that big scene that we do with Muv Comes Home, it's a sort of like a tragic-comical. It's almost like a Shakespearean kind of like, is it funny or is it tragic? She's just saying she wished she'd have flushed the kid away. He's hearing it. He's heartbroken. And then she's making some kind of like a drunken, tragic display for the gorgeous Flip. And, what kind of movie are we still in? and I shot it as a master, if you see, because I think great comedy exists in masters. You sort of like, you're seeing everybody's reactions. Wonderful Celia Weston, great comedic chops, you know, Bet, this is heaven sent. So I could really rely on my actors a lot, but really kept the pace up in those comedic moments. Dante and I had already spoken of, you know, how I wanted the scene to look, when I wanted to focus on Billy and where, and you know, he's such an extraordinary cinematographer that you know, of course, I was more privileged than most first-time directors to have somebody of his chops who would suggest some great ideas. So I feel that being a director above anything else, I feel, I can't speak for you and for the directors in the room, it's very collaborative. If you hire Colleen Atwood and Dante Spinotti, you know, I'm going to say, hey, Colleen, I was thinking of this idea and this idea, but it's like, then she goes away and she comes out with the costumes that Alex Lawther wore just from a conversation. It's important to me he wears, he becomes a mermaid in that scene where he's come back from school, and you know, it's almost like he puts that costume on as an armor. You know, it's like, I've got to be me. You know, Flip's told me to wear those Wranglers and to be less fabulous. And I'm going to try it because I love Flip. But it's not working, because when you're targeted, you're targeted. So he comes back and he puts this beautiful dress on. And I wanted him, I saw him as a mermaid. I said, Colleen, can you make a mermaid dress? Boy, did she make a mermaid dress. And likewise, when he gets beaten up, I wanted him to be a bride. I wanted that bride to be defiled, to go into that room and to be mauled and molested and blooded, and I think that gave it poignancy. And again, Colleen, she designed this like extraordinary wedding dress for Billy. So I'm sorry I've gone off on my own tangent here.
It's great to hear from the experience of how sort of careful everything was in the film, and the collaborations as well. Questions? And he was good.
He's watching it for the first time tonight.
Oh.
At the opening.
Yeah.
Sting and I have been neighbors of John, weirdly, in New York and LA for as long as we've been having kids, so 30-something years. And I just saw him when I read the script, and I read Coach Carter. It's like, he's like McEnroe. So, oh, I know him, so it's worth a punt. And I said, I called his agent. I was very respectful. I called his agent and I said, do you think John would ever do this role? It's a small role in a film that examines bullying, but I'd really love him to do it. And he said, what, to play him, you mean? And I said, well, no, not exactly. I mean, maybe traits of him, certain personality traits, but definitely not him. And he had a ball, and of course all the cast and crew were delighted. And when you have to work, as you know, under the pressure of you've got to get this sucker in 22 days. In 22 days for making a 90-minute picture you're really like having to jam. So there wasn't much time off. So when we had John on set, because the whole crew, like they were lit up. It was a great bonus in many, many ways.
He really was a natural. I mean,
he's a natural, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. We have time for maybe one or two more questions, and then wrapping up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've been on the road with the film for a year. When I say on the road, it's enjoyed 29 film festivals, a lot of LGBTQ festivals, and I've sat through many screenings, like really to not just see my film, but to watch the kids watching the film, and then to do talkbacks. And it's been really illuminating to like listen to them and hear their challenges. And as I went along, I was thinking, I can't just like make a film like this and, to your point, just like let it be just another movie, because the themes are so important and so prevalent and becoming even more prevalent with the amount of cyberbullying that's going on and the tragic number of teenagers who are taking their lives. So I wanted to reach out to not-for-profit and came across Stomp Out Bullying, and we're partnering with them, and they really deal with bullying more in the cyberspace and in the digital space with kids who are really, up against it with their detractors and who are threatening to kill themselves. And they've saved a lot of lives. They're nationwide. They're a really responsible organization. So we're partnering with them, and I'm looking at ways we can endow them. It's important that they stay, solvent and able to do the work that they do, to work with the psychologists that they need to work with to help these kids. Yes, it's not getting better, bullying, because of our because of this digital age. I think, and I don't know if any of you saw the Wall Street Journal, but Sting and I joined an advisory board for JANA with JANA Partners, and we're when I say taking on Apple, I don't mean it in the sort of like an attack on Apple, but Apple, I think, guilty of not enough checks and balances, really, for how kids get addicted to their screens. There are a lot of papers, medical papers, that are written that this is a disorder to get addicted to your screen. It's not something that is easily fixed either. So we really need to be very proactive about it. So it's addiction and it's bullying, and these are big themes that come from our brilliant technological age, which we all are so grateful for in many ways. But we have opened Pandora's box, and we must be always present and sensitive to, like, children who are the younger generations to us are born into the world at this time. We who are older had the privilege, I'd call it, of being born into a world pre-cyberspace where you took your problems to your best friend or to your community or to your mum or to whoever and talked about them, and your community would support you. And sure, bullying is an ordinary evil. It's prevalent. It's always been here. But the insidiousness of cyberbullying has not always been here, and the effects that it's having on our teenagers is something that I think is frightening. I think it is something that no parent can take for granted, that their kid, when they come home from school, if they've had a bad day and they go online, that day can become a tragic day. I've actually had friends who've had that personal experience with their 17-year-old son, and I've seen, how dreadfully painful that has been to them. And we can do something about it by being present, by saying there are dangers here, and let's look out for it and regroup in communities. I think that our communities are breaking down because of this age of technology.
One final question, because we're in the community of the Directors Guild. What are you going to direct or work on next?
It's important to me to get Freak Show into the world. We are opening in 9 cities theatrically and video on demand. It'll end up in Hulu in April. And I'm going to work out with Stomp Out for a while, because I'm very serious about this issue, and it's really opened my eyes through all these talkbacks with young people that I'd like to get involved. And directing-wise, I'd like to... I took Freak Show on because there was a need to take it on. I'd like to find a story that just speaks to me organically, and I can take my time and help figure it out. That said, I probably won't be nearly as sort of like, efficient with the process as I've been, because I've been a producer for such a long time, and I know how to get the job done. So I am an actor too. I have two plays in the two plays in the offing. One is at the Public, which I hope we'll get done, and the other is at the Women's Project. So there's certain irons in the fire. Nothing concretized until our freak shows in the world.
Well, congratulations on the film, and thank you so much, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss an episode. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.